Thank you.
Can you see that does it record?
Yes, I see it. I see 2 record buttons next to your names under participants. I see it.
Okay.
I see one for you and one for Liz. So perfect. All right. So if you want to, okay. Thank you for coming, everyone. We have representatives. We have Luca
Zimowczak.
and David Nachman here from VisaServe, NPZ Law Group. The college has worked with them over the past few years, and they've come and presented at the college on different immigration issues or updates or opportunities. And so we, student involvement, Liz Perez and I have invited them to give this presentation today. So that way you're able to find out some updates to any immigration in light of the current pandemic and how it may affect you or someone you know. So I'm gonna go ahead and allow Luca and David to take over from now.
Thank you very much, Corey. Thank you so much for inviting us. We appreciate it. And it's really good for the students to just, have these updates because really a lot is going on. For us, email is not stopping and phone calls are not stopping from students and other clients asking various questions. What's the impact on the immigration status? So hopefully we're going to be able to answer all the questions today. And if not, of course, we are available over the email.
Exactly. And so, Corey, thank you. It continues to be our pleasure to assist you and also to, support, obviously, the students at, at Rockland. And just that being said, there's so much going on right now. It's really, I have to say, difficult, and I'm sure you're finding it difficult to keep up with everything. So I just want to let your students, whoever is signed in, know that not every international student officer or DSO has the foresight to say, hey, let's go to someone in the private sector who's dealing with these questions on a day-to-day basis. So I commend you for that. And hopefully we can provide some really valuable information. And that being said, Luca, one of the things we've been doing in our webinars for the various colleges and universities is pointing out that there's a lot of really great information out there. There's a lot of really bad information out there. And so where can I get really good information, Luca? What are you looking at to stay on the cutting edge?
Well, even better, where do I not look for information? So definitely no blogs. And different chat rooms. I would say stay away from that. And of course, the best would be the government website, so USCIS.gov, Department of State. I'm sure school provides good information. And then, we on our website, which is I'm going to actually share it in the comments. We provide information about what's new, what's going on, or students can sign up to our listserv. But it's very important just to stay away from blogs and different chat rooms. A lot of bad information.
Unfortunately, we keep getting questions, and they usually begin with "my friend told me," and that's information out of chat rooms where individuals offer up information, which everyone is offering information, but the thing is, accurate information is really what's important. Luca mentioned our listserv. What she meant to say was our newsletter, which we
newsletter.
No, don't be silly. We put out. We do have a blog which is attached to our website, which is very helpful. And I try every day to get information out to everyone. But it's really coming, I have to say, fast and furious to the point where it's even coming faster than I can get it out. Like this morning, there was an update with regard to the new treatment of H-2As. These are temporary agricultural workers. And I was just reading through these new guidelines, and it's just really difficult to keep up with everything that's going on. I don't really feel that that's tremendously helpful to the students anyway, but again, there's just a lot going on. So we do have a newsletter we put out on a bi-monthly basis. Kunal is on, so I just want to thank him because he's instrumental in helping us to put that together and put that out. And what we try to do is to put together just sort of a survey of everything that's happened over the last 2 weeks. I think, Corey, you certainly get it. If you do, there's no pride in authorship. Please feel free to share it with your students if you feel there's something that's good information in there. We'll probably be talking about some of the resource documents today that are linked to those newsletters that we put out. For example, SEVP put out a really good FAQ, which is tremendous. I'm sure, Corey, you saw it. I don't know if the students saw it, but it's I usually find nowadays that our clients and potential clients know more than we do when they pick up the phone and call our office, which is fine. We don't have a problem. I think Luca and I don't mind being challenged. But, you know, a lot of times what you think might be black and white is not necessarily black and white. There is still a lot of gray. So with that being said, Luca, let's go into some of the changes, okay? What are some of the recent changes at the USCIS, the Department of Homeland Security arm that handles benefits granting? What's going on there?
So the good news is that the USCIS, as far as the service centers, they're still open. So everything, they're still accepting filings. We are still filing, they're processing, we're getting decisions. So there is a lot of confusion on that. You know, what is really closed, these are the field offices. So that's where you go in person for an interview or for InfoPass. So those offices are closed until May 2nd for now. I'm sure it's going to be extended. And application support centers are closed as well. So those are the ones where you would go for fingerprints, for those applying for OPT, for biometrics. So what we see is all the appointments are closed, canceled, and rescheduled. But, you know, as far as the service centers, everything is open. We, of course, had a situation with Vermont Service Center. It was closed, I think, for about 5 days due to the COVID-19. And it may be happening in the future with other service centers. But, you know, for now, they're still operating, which is a good thing. We do have some flexibility, for example, with regards to the requests for evidence. We got additional 60 days for those requests for evidence that were received between March 1st and May 1st. So if there is a deadline of July 1st, for example, we could add additional 60 days, which is nice. Not as nice is that the premium processing was suspended. So it's not too applicable to students, but for those that, you know, maybe are applying for H-1B or an I-140 with regards to the green card, premium processing is suspended. So premium processing is, what is it? Where the government, you pay the government additional filing fee and they make a decision in 2 weeks. So we don't have the premium processing, but we still have the expedite processing. So if there is a need and urgency to expedite any type of benefit, there is still an option to try to ask for an expedite processing. Usually the government will come back within 3 to 5 days, and you know, they would let us know whether expedite request was granted or not.
Is it easy to ask for an expedite?
I mean, it is easy to ask, but I have the feeling too many people are asking for it. So the question is how easy it is to get it. So it's easy to ask for it. It's just how easy it is to actually get it.
So anyone who's asking for an expedite should go online and look for the criteria that are required for asking for an expedite and make sure that when you ask that your request falls into one of those criteria.
Correct. We have some good news since application support centers are closed. This is good news for those that are applying for EAD extension, which is employment authorization card, because the government is reusing biometrics or the fingerprints. So that's some good news. As far as the extensions of the visitor status, So the students could have family here, maybe relatives, friends, parents, and I've seen a lot of questions, especially about the parents. Let's say the parents are visiting, and typically on a B2 visa, they would get 6 months. If the status is expiring just about now, they would need to file an extension. So I would highly recommend to proceed with extension, which is not as difficult as filed with the USCIS, with the filing fee. So that's not a problem. For those that entered with ESTA, so that's a visa waiver, there is a procedure now with the USCIS and also with the CBP. These are the airports where you can call them and request an extension for about 30 days. It's called satisfactory departure request. So there is a possibility.
And I think that in light of the fact that everything is just sort of going day by day, just yesterday they announced that there's an additional 30-day satisfactory departure authorization that can be obtained. If you got the first one, then you can get a second one. So that's something new that just came out. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So just going back quickly on one of the things, obviously at the Application Support Center and the USCIS district offices, those are the places where the government sees people face to face. So obviously they closed it down to ensure everyone's health. So that was what was being done there. And one of the other things that we're starting to see actually for folks who have green card applications pending is that they're actually now waiving the interviews and they're sending the green cards without conducting the interview. So that was something that happened before. So that's sort of a welcome new change. So we're kind of excited about that. Ludka, what's going on at the embassies abroad? There are obviously a lot of changes here, but what's going on abroad and how does that impact our students or Corey students?
So US embassies and consulates are closed for routine visa services. So they're not closed, they're just closed for the appointments, regular appointments. However, if there is an emergency, if a student or family member has a major emergency, they should definitely request an expedite processing, explain the urgency, and obviously the embassy will decide whether or not they will grant it. Of course, we know they are doing visa appointments for medical professionals. So those that are already approved on a J1 program or the H1B, they would be able to get the visa appointment and actually enter the United States. But otherwise, we don't know, because the question we are getting, when do you think I can go and process my F1 visa? So we don't know, but it is expected that, it's going to go country by country, probably based on the travel restriction and based on what's going on in that country. So the best practice would be just to check the website of particular embassy. So if you're planning to go to the US Embassy in Peru, make sure that you check website of that particular embassy. Some embassies are closed, they're saying till May 1st. Some are saying it's going to be indefinitely. So the best practice is just to check.
And my guess is that, Corey, you probably through NAFTA have your finger on the pulse and, you're able to monitor what's going on at the U.S. consulates abroad. We also are members of the Global Migration section of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. So we have feet on the ground at the various consulates abroad, and we're hearing what's going on in the various countries. So it's our hope that as things start to loosen up and we know what consulates will open up, we'll be able to start announcing that. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So specifically with regard to F1 students, and this is probably the information that you guys all need to know or want to know, and probably I'm guessing that have been barraging Corey with this information or with questions, because I know we've been getting a tremendous number of questions directly. What's going on in the student visa world, Ludka?
So as you mentioned with the frequently asked questions from SEVP, they're pretty good. They're posting, I would say, on a weekly basis, new information, and they are answering the questions. So the schools have flexibility, which is good. whatever the new rules are, that's not mandatory. The school will decide what their policy is, and they have the obligation to notify the SCVP system within 10 days. So most of the schools are online, so all the students are studying online, whether they are abroad or they are here. Electronic I-20s, it is allowed, it is fine. Electronic signature is fine too, but not all the schools decided to utilize it. So some schools still are going with wet signatures. So what I want to point out, these are just things that they can do, but again, it's really up to the school what they decide, or how conservative they want to be. They can decide what their policy is going to be. For as far as the OPT and CPT, some students, it is okay if they're abroad, they can still complete the OPT CPT. We just don't know what's going to happen for those students that are abroad and will need to file for an OPT. We don't have a guidance yet because that's a USCIS's jurisdiction. So as EVP just mentioned that, they're waiting for a guidance. So we are not sure for those students that are abroad, how the OPT application is going to look like. We don't know yet. So it's better to have a backup plan. But again, I just want to make it clear that all the flexible rules we have, that's, school can decide what they want to do.
And I just want to add to that. So the one reason that schools are choosing maybe not to do the electronic signatures is because it came out of SCVP, but it didn't come out of CBP,
Correct.
Department of State. We don't know, like, if they go, once the consulates open, is the consulate's going to be accepting the scanned copies? We didn't get guidance on that. So to be cautious, we, in my opinion, I'm doing both. Both scanned and particularly for like an OPT application, I was sending, because they only have to send a copy of it with their to USCIS.
Yeah.
So I feel comfortable doing it with that way. But for those that are abroad, I am a little bit hesitant to send them a scanned copy and telling them that it's okay for them to go and go to the interview with that, because there's been no guidance, unfortunately, for that. But I'm sure it's going to come out soon, especially once the consulates start opening up.
Exactly.
So one of the other things in this SEVP FAQ also dealt, and I can't remember, Corey, do we have J1s who, I think I've seen some J1s.
The only J1s we have at the college here are like mainly au pairs.
Right. Exactly.
So yep. I don't have sponsored students at the college right now.
Right, and I think that those are the folks who actually, from time to time, we've seen, they've been the au pairs who've
Yes, the change of status mainly.
Exactly. So I just want to point out that this is a really good thing to take a look at, because in the event that you are not going to stay in your program, but you need to go, let's say, to someone else's home and stay with a relative, that is actually addressed in the, that's actually addressed in that FAQ. So you may want to take a look at that FAQ. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So this is an area that we've been getting barraged with telephone calls because we have a lot of folks who are students doing OPT, students who are working. I'm not sure if we have any alums on on the phone today who may have had issues with regard to layoff or furlough or termination, but this seems to be these seem to be the questions that are coming at us fast and furious. And so there are really two, there are two issues that we need to look at. One is the testing and treatment with regard to any potential health issues and what the potential ramifications of that are. And then a big question is unemployment insurance and whether or not people can apply for that. And then, of course, we're more than happy to take any questions that the students or anyone who's tuned in here that they have. And maybe, Corey, you might have some questions also, but we can, we can go through. I'm sure that you've taken some questions over the past several days from folks who are affected. But Ludka, probably most importantly, I'm a student and I think that I might, have COVID-19 can I go for testing? And if I do go for testing, is that going to impact my immigration status?
Well, you should for sure go for testing.
Okay.
And the good news is the government actually came up, and I'm glad they did. They came up with the guidance pretty early on, stating that the testing and the treatment as well will not be considered negatively in the future under the public charge rule. So we have a new public charge rule as of February 24th of this year, and everyone is very concerned about it. And we've had several presentations, talking about public charge rule and about public benefits, but that will not affect in a negative way any future immigration. So that's an easy one. Government confirmed, we are okay. So yes, if you're a student that you think that you're sick, you definitely should go for testing and the treatment, of course, no issue at all. The more problematic is the unemployment insurance. And that's, as you said, we're getting a lot of questions on that. So there are several layers with regards to the unemployment insurance. Number one, students are asking, am I eligible? This is not an immigration law question. This is a state law question. So it's very important to check what the state law says. What is the eligibility for unemployment insurance? For those having OPT and having work permit, typically they would be. So I particularly just looked at New York, for example, and it looks like they would be eligible for unemployment insurance. But it is very important that, students check the state law. What's the eligibility? Second layer of this issue with unemployment insurance is it going to affect in any way the public charge rule? So when the student is going to be filing for a green card in the future or doing change of status, there is going to be a question about public benefits. And many people are concerned about it. Is my green card going to be denied because I had unemployment insurance? And the answer, again, government confirmed the same, that would not be an issue for public charge rule. So it would not negatively impact any future applications. However, the third layer with unemployment insurance is that we still have the days of unemployment for students under OPT. So it's still 90 days. So yes, that's great that you can get unemployment insurance, but remember, nothing has changed. And that's the question we are getting. Students feel, or they maybe heard, they read in blogs, different chat rooms, that there will be, or there is an extension of those days, but there is none. So it's still 90 days. So it's very important that, students on OPT calculate properly the 90 days.
Right. So about 3 days ago, there was a release that came out from the Department of Homeland Security where they were saying that there is a liberalization and there is leniency, but you have to read the fine print because unfortunately not yet has that trickled down to the 90 days. So we're hoping that they will deal with that, but we're still in a waiting, so we're still in a holding pattern on that. So just have to be careful.
Exactly.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
I think that's it on unemployment insurance.
Okay, good. And there were we were on a webinar yesterday where they offered some very interesting and creative methodologies for that 90 days. I thought that was pretty good, Luca, where they talked about like self-employment and volunteering.
And volunteering.
Yeah.
So make sure that you don't go over the 90 days because you will violate your status. That's very important. And just very interesting question I got this morning, which I thought was interesting from student being on OPT. And I never even would think of that question. So I'm just going to share it. I had a student who is worried about the 90 days. So I told the student, okay, so if you're hitting the 90 days, you're better off maybe changing to visitor status to be on a safe side. And the student says, well, I read everything online and it looks like I can just file extension of a visitor status because I already have the B2 visa. So what happened was the student already has F1 visa, but also from before, the student also has the B2 visa. So you definitely cannot do it this way. The student would have to leave the country and re-enter with the B2 and then potentially file the extension. But if someone is here on F1, even though they have the B2 visa in the passport, they have to file change of status within the United States.
Right. And so Lutka so first of all, I know that you've been doing a tremendous number of them, and so have I. We've been doing change of status applications. Is that a difficult process to do?
Hard to say. For us, it's not difficult. Some clients are stating that it is complicated. So, it's not. It is possible to do. The best would be to check the USCIS website, www.uscis.gov, for instructions. But it's important just to file it timely.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I know there's the 30-day rule usually where you have to maintain your current status up until at least 30 days before your next status goes into effect. Does that apply if you're doing the change of status to a tourist? No. Okay. That's where I was confused.
That great rule only applies to F1.
Okay.
Actually, I was just with that student on a call today, and I was saying, when the government receives it at least the day the status is expiring, it is still timely filed. Of course, I don't like the adrenaline, so I don't want to do it this way. I don't want to file it the last possible day. Okay. But it's fine. That's considered timely filing, even 2 days before, but the government has to receive it. So if you're going to send it regular mail and it's going to get there 2 weeks later, that's late. Even though right now we do have a provision, the government came up with the situation where, let's say the student didn't do anything, didn't know that they can file change of status. So there is something called non-proton where you're filing late. And you have to show what are the extraordinary circumstances. And of course, COVID-19 would be it, but I don't recommend to go for it, just file it timely. So the government has to receive that request at least, of the day when the status is expiring.
So that includes the 60-day grace period, correct? For the status or no?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm just thinking about students who may be on OPT or are graduating and they want to go home, but they can't go home. So
that's exactly, many students are in that situation. That was my student this morning that, so it's our plan will be that during the grace period, we are going to be proceeding and filing the change of status because we don't want to have any negative impact in the future. That particular student is planning maybe have some break and then come back and proceed with a master's degree. So the student will have to apply for F1 visa, and we, obviously it's not good to have any unlawful status in the United States.
Yeah. We did have a question from Emmanuel.
Hardship, which was really a good one and actually goes into this particular slide. Is that the one you were thinking about, Corey?
Yes.
Yeah. So Lutka, that was, we actually addressed it within this slide. I think we just almost glossed over it, but what would you recommend if a student came to you, or Corey, what would you recommend if a student came to you and asked you to do a hardship economic EAD? Would that be something that you'd be inclined to do?
So for me, obviously everyone has a different opinion on this. So I'm a little skeptical with those hardship situations, because let's remember that F1 students, when they applied for the F1, they had to show that they do have sufficient funds, financial support. And in addition, it's going to take a long time to get it. So how is it going to help in the immediate future right now? So I'm not a fan, but I do know, there are students that are going for it, and there are schools maybe that are recommending it. But me personally, I'm not a fan of it, and I don't think it's the best way to proceed.
And I agree, because I think that what ends up happening is that it really strikes at the very heart of what a student is providing as information, which is the underpinning of the student visa, and that is that you will not have an issue of hardship, that you are able to sustain yourself.
And,
So,
you know, until we have a clear guidance that the government will say that there is something like that and it's okay, I would probably just wait, you know, for the government to say, yes, you know, this is a bad situation for students. Yes, they should do it. I would just stay away because I would be worried the same way when we talked about I-20s, I would be worried about Department of State, how they are going to see it and, you know, how other agencies are going to see it. So it's just matter of opinion, really.
great. So we, at this point, what we like to do is we like to talk about the various types of status that are available. I think we have just a couple of
Yeah,
minutes.
we're just going to cover
So
this slide. We'll have in a few
for those,
minutes to
for
just
those,
talk about this slide.
exactly. For those of you who've been to presentations that we made before, and Corey, obviously, if this is something you feel that your students would benefit from, we can do an additional workshop where we can talk about the various forms of status that are available in the US and also how they can move across the spectrum where individuals, let's say, have no status, going all the way from non-immigrant, immigrant, and then to naturalization. This is the normal march that a person takes when they become, when they're trying to immigrate to the US.
And also, I just want to point out also for those, you know, obviously we are talking about F1, so we're looking at non-immigrant visa categories. So we talked about B, visitor. You know, it's really good slide to look at for students, like what are they going to do? For those especially that are on the OPT and they don't know what to do next, it's a good slide to look at that, you know, you need to go from F1 to switch some, you know, either to a visitor status, or, you know, for some of our students, they may able to be proceed with the E visa or, I don't know, O or R, you know, so
there are options for them.
there are options. So it's not just, we talked about visitor status, but that's not the only one. So it's just good slide to see that within non-immigrant category, normally we just use it to explain how to apply for a green card, you know, how you go from each category. But it's also good to see, you know, for those that are in F1 and they need to change it to a different status, there are different visa categories, not just visitor status.
So, and Corey, I'd like to just say, number one, thank you very much for your generous referrals to our office. We're very glad to support you, your students, and them, their families. Many of them, when you send them to us, actually, I have to say a good number have I-1, you know, and I just want to point out it's generally a 2-year school. It's a 2-year college. So the considerations sometimes for us are a little different. But many of the students who come do have I-130s that are pending. And with that, I want to ask Ludka, what happens when you have a student who has an I-130 who's pending and they're, let's say, F1 and contemplating B? Can you explain that dichotomy and what happens there?
Yeah, that's a good point. So for those students that are here, and for example, parent is a US citizen and the parent applied for a family petition, I-130 petition, it's very important to kind of think about the timing, how this was done, because if the student's F1 visa is expired and student is planning to travel, they would need a new visa. So of course now they cannot apply for the visa, but those with the I-130s, that would be a red flag, because at the consulate, there is a question, have you ever applied for immigrant petition? The answer would be yes, and there would be a red flag. But for those that already have the F1 visa, parent just filed the petition. This is going to take really long time, 5 to 7 years to get a green card. So if they have the visa, they can travel, and they're going to be interfacing with the CBP, with the customs, in case they're questioned about it. Remember, this is a future petition, future application. So student can say, my current intent is just to go to school and study. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. My parents filed it for me, but who knows if I'm going to stay here permanently. So the travel is possible. The visa application, I wouldn't recommend it.
Now, what about diversity? Because November is going to be coming. It's coming up soon, and the students are going to be thinking about diversity lottery. If they're non-immigrant, pure non-immigrants, would you recommend that they apply for the diversity lottery or
Yes.
not? Okay,
Yes,
and
I
why?
would recommend it. The government confirmed, Department of State confirmed, they don't see it as a problem. It's not the same as filing an I-130 petition. So yes, we do have a lot of students that actually won the lottery. And the key is just to maintain the F1 until they can file the adjustment of status. That's very important. They have to maintain the underlying F1 status.
Perfect. Now I know we're just coming up to the
There we
end.
go. 1 minute.
No problem, Corey. I'm gonna hand it over to you. Okay.
Well,
Do you have any questions? Yeah.
I don't have any questions right now. If anyone does have any questions, I encourage you to email me at cspring2@sunyrockland.edu. Oh, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
But I want to thank both you, David and Luca, for having this for us today. And if it seems like we need more information presented to us, we'll schedule a second presentation to do other topics, because I think what you presented today is very timely and very informative. So on that note, thank you so much. And you have your information up to contact you, and I have your information as well. And anyone that is referred to you, I know receives $100 off their first consultation as well.
Exactly. And we can share the PowerPoint. We can definitely send it to you. So no problem. So everyone.